I like the paddle.
Okay.
Yes, Election Day in America 2024. I know all of you voted out there. I voted today. I love voting on Election Day. Only took me 12 minutes from getting out of my car to going back to sitting in my car. I think all the senior citizens here cleared out the early voting. So hope that y'all have a wonderful day. And there's winners and losers, but we're Americans, and let's treat each other with dignity and respect, as we always do at our American Space Museum, where politics, sex, and religion have no play in our influence on outer space and promoting our museum that for over 20 years has preserved the birth of America's space age right here in its delivery room, Brevard County, Florida. So thank you all for joining, and thank you, John Graham, for running the board today. We've got Marty Winkle is in the background there in Calverton, Long Island, doing a family thing up there. Didn't have any new autumn pictures from anybody here, but that's okay. Let me get that picture. Well, that picture's on there because we want you to look at yesterday's show with our wonderful uh, astronaut wrangler at Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex, Nick Thomas. We had a great show with Nick yesterday talking about space food. And thank you, Nick, for sharing it with so many astronauts that are in your inner circle, as it was an excellent show looking at space food, how it's evolved from the Mercury days through the shuttle era here. So let's kick off today a little bit with some fireworks. A beautiful night launch last night. Carlton Bailey was close enough on the Cape Canaveral Space Force to get this picture of the launch. These are very difficult shots at night. Boy, that baby went straight up with a cargo ship that docked with the International Space Station today. No doubt with some goodies, maybe for Thanksgiving to share later on, as 4 Americans are on the International Space Station. Uh, with 3 Russians, and they placed their votes on today's important presidential election in America. And we'll tell you how they did that and who was the first person to vote from space here in just a minute. But wanted to kick off today's show with a little bit of a reprise from what we did with Nick yesterday. Is how good are you at recognizing astronauts? And would you be able to tell a real space traveler from an actor if that person in question was wearing a space costume? Well, case in point is this commercial for Capital One. Maybe if you've seen them, I'm not going to promote them because they're not giving us any money yet. But maybe you've seen this commercial. It is a Kids Day. Uh, uh, Kids are having their parents come to school and brag about them on career day, and everybody wants to talk to the Capital One guy. You know that guy. He lives at the Capital One Bank in there. And lo and behold, there's Derek Jeter holding the bat, uh, New York Yankee All Star and Hall of Famer who no one wanted to talk to. And it took me a couple times, uh, John, to figure out who the astronaut was there and if it was a real astronaut because it was so quick. They don't identify Derek Jeter or the astronaut who is former
Former
shuttle
shuttle.
and space station astronaut Karen Nyberg. How
Karen
about that?
Nyberg. Okay, I was trying to figure it out.
Were you? Yeah, Karen Nyberg on there. Here she is at the Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex. I'm going to move my red, white, and blue out of the way there a little bit, and let's make that look pretty big there. As she did a special presentation at Kennedy Space Center a while back. These are her quilts that she did of Sally Ride and Valentina Tereshkova, the first, of course, Russian and first woman in space, and then Sally, the first uh, American woman in space. And she's just so charming and what a wonderful person. She's married to astronaut Doug Hurley and actually did a quilt in space. Forget which STS mission. Maybe someone will chime in on that, as we're already seeing hellos from Tommy Usiak up there in Pennsylvania. That's an important state in this election. and Dave Stangy's there. Can't read all of Dave's question on my screen here, John. Part of it's cut off. So, and Steve Jokins has got it on there. So he's going to correct that for me here in just a second, as we got a new way for me to read what's on there. So what's in your wallet is what I want to ask you all there. Mine's got moths in it, okay, so to speak. Well, Marty, we miss you, brother, but you've got a great question today. I'm going to put my flag out of the way. That seems to be, if I get it over here. You know, everyone knows I'm a flag waving person here, as we are the American Space Museum. There we go. Dave Stangy asks, had either candidate discussed what their plans for NASA was during their next term? No, I haven't heard. I actually tried to Google some of that, of whether the Republican agenda or the Democratic agenda would continue with Artemis. We know how this goes. Every presidential candidate has either said we're going to the moon or said we're going to Mars. President Obama said we're going to turn our spaceport into a commercial spaceport, and thank God he did, and not in a political way, but for the businesses that are booming and have brought the Space Coast back thriving. I landed here 7 years ago, and quite frankly, it was a little bit depressed around here. Boy, when Falcon 9 rockets started shooting off, it was all holds barred there. Like we saw the one last night with Carlton Bailey's streak shot there. A little hot on that streak shot there, buddy. Get that f-stop down another notch or two. These are very difficult shots to do, if you're even for seasoned veterans like Carlton Bailey, who's done over 600 launches there. So there he is chiming in there. Dean Babcock's on there, and Steve Jokins. So there's again another look at Karen Nyberg doing quilting in space. So Marty is asking, who is the first astronaut to cast a vote in a U.S. election from outer space, and where was that person? All right, so ponder that one there a little bit. You can put your answer up there. We're not going to give it to the end, but it is kind of a trick question a little bit, but I want both answers right. Who was it and where were they? So let's kick off some happy birthdays for astronauts born on November 5th. That deserves my party hat there. We've got, I didn't make a meme out of it, but Bob Senker is 76. Charles Scorch Hobaugh is 63. Alvin Drew's 59. And the late Alan Poindexter would have been 63 years old today. And unfortunately, he passed away in a freak accident 12 years ago. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But look at each of these guys. There's the way Senker looked on his space flight in 1984 or 5, I believe, his one and done. Robert Joseph Bob Senker was born November 5th, 1948, and raised in Melanin Township, Pennsylvania. Payload specialist for RCA on 61C, the final mission before the disaster of Challenger. That one had two Nelsons on it, Pinky Nelson and NASA Administrator, I want to say Don Nelson. That's not right. What's Nelson's first name? My. But anyway, he, someone tell me our administrator's first name. Senior moment there. Senker's, here's what Senker looks like.
Yeah, put that in chat.
Senker looks like that. He looked like this. Now he looks like that. We all change, don't we, John?
No, absolutely.
He's a frequent presenter at the astronaut encounter at Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex, and a Penn State and Rutgers University grad, both in the Big Ten now, trying to beat up Ohio State, but they never will. So happy birthday to Bob. I believe he's out to Space Center, looking at my list here. Yeah, he's there at the end of January, the last weekend of January. We can go see him again, and he does a good job. There is Charles Owen Scorch is his nickname. Hobaugh was born November 5th, 1961 in Bar Harbor, Maine. That makes him 63 years old. but he grew up in Northridge, Ohio. A graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, 3 shuttle missions, twice a pilot, twice a commander, 36 days in space, and he was the re-entry and landing capcom for the STS-107 mission, in which the shuttle was destroyed on re-entry. And he spoke the words, Columbia, Houston, UHF com check several times after mission control lost contact. And he knew deep down in his heart that something horrible had happened because the physics of these flights, everything is within the calculated second. And you just could feel for him with his heart sank. So Stephen Jokums has got his guess in there, and we'll reveal that later. Yeah, Bill Nelson, Tom, thank you for helping me out there. I was going John, Tom, Bill, whatever his name is, Bill Nelson, NASA administrator. And Carlton said the streaks are always tough with the moisture in the air. And but happy birthday to Scorch Hoba. I think Nick Thomas told me how he got that nickname one time. It was something about a landing that he scorched at one time. They're always teasing, particularly the Navy pilots, about things they do. Let me get a
I
cup
love
there.
That cup.
Pardon me?
I love the coffee cup.
Well, yes, we need to
Oh,
sell them here, but that's
I love it.
been a classic favorite over the years. Next person celebrating a birthday, Benjamin Alvin Drew, was born November 5th, 1962 in Washington, D.C., and grew up in Brooklyn. Alvin Drew received his commission as a second lieutenant from the U.S. Air Force Academy in 1984. He was a nice little meme there of him. 2 missions, but he was on the last flight of Discovery in February 2011. There he is giving talks, as he often does. The 200th person to perform a spacewalk in space, his first of 2 that he did. His first flight was in 2008, STS-118, and then he waited 3 more years to fly with this lovely young lady that we so much enjoy supporting our museum, Nicole Stott. They were chums on the last flight of Discovery. So happy birthday to you, Drew. And sadly, today is the birthday of the late Alan Poindexter, known as Dex, born November 5th, 1961 in Pasadena, California, but he grew up in Rockville, Maryland. And he was killed in a freak jet ski accident in 2012 at age 51. And I've talked to several astronauts, John, who knew him and knew him well, and even support crew members, White Room people, and some of the suit techs that just say he's such a great guy on the console there, and what a tragedy that was. And we just want to let you know that we miss Dex, as well as love to celebrate all of the astronauts out there. Why do we do their birthdays? Because there's only 622 humans that can say they orbited the Earth. Over 300 of them are NASA astronauts. They're in our communities doing great things, and we love to shout out to them for their accomplishments, particularly on their birthdays. So, see that Tom Celentano's joined us. Appreciate you, Tom. Well, a landing occurred on this date that had a hard time getting up in space. The launch of STS-73 set the record for 6 scrubs, and our good friend Kathy Thornton's there, being led to the pad by Ken Bowersox. Ken Rominger was the pilot there, Sox and Romo. They wore these American flag hats, I believe, on the final 6th attempt to launch. Had all kinds of problems with that launch. STS-61C in January 1986, which was Senker's flight, has tied for the most scrubs of 6 launches there. So, but the landing happened today, and I love this photograph. Holy smokes, you don't see a photo like that very often of a shuttle landing. That is the ground support crew. I believe that's actually the White Room gang that is there. You see a ambulance situation, so forth. What a beautiful landing there of Columbia. And in the background is Enterprise. either taking off for a uh, tune-up or something that in California, or it's coming back. It looks like it's taken off though there. So how cool is that to share those pictures with you when Columbia came down on this date? I was trying to see with 7 astronauts, Bowersox, Rominger, Thornton was on there, Katie Coleman, Mike Lopez Allegra, Fred Leslie, and Albert Sacco on his only flight. All right. And many of you didn't know, but now you're going to know now that the landing strip at this huge 3 mile long landing strip for the space shuttle was grooved like this and crested to get the water off of it quickly if there was an incident of rain that could stop the landing. I don't think they even ever landed when it was moist. We will talk to our buddy Terry White about that when he's on our show again there. And thank you, Tom Celentano, for wishing me a happy birthday. Mine was November 3rd. And great, good to be alive, great to be involved with this museum. And I'm honored to be its new director. Well, let's get to the big topic of today, the U.S. presidential election. And we know that you all voted, but votes are being tallied today. Even the votes from Sonny Williams, Butch Wilmore, Don Pettit, and Nick Hague all casted their ballots for the earth, for America off the earth, okay? And just how in the world do they do that? And there's the beautiful green screen that I have behind me there. Can't get much more American than that. Out the cupola that astronaut Kay Heyer helped take that up on her flight of 1:30. Hope to see Kay at a luncheon tomorrow. Maybe she's in town with the NASA legends that I'm honored to be with. UCX says that Dex's father was Admiral John Poindexter, who was a national security advisor to President Reagan. Thank you for that little bit of information, Tom. John, we have the most intelligent YouTube watchers ever. And you can tell that because there's no idiots on there saying stupid stuff on there. But we have you there to get them off of there if they do.
You have a great audience.
We really do.
They are smart.
So how is voting from space possible? Okay, let's have a little bookworm lesson here on our presidential election. That's possible, as this meme shows you there. Through NASA's Space Communication and Navigation program called SCAN. Similar to most data transmitted between the space station and Mission Control Center at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, votes are cast in space. They travel through the agency's Near Space Network managed by NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland. The network connects missions within 1.2 million miles of Earth with communications and navigation services, including the space station. So it's probably communicating with the Webb telescope that's at Lagrange point, kind of staying still between the Earth and Moon over 1 million miles away. Well, just like Americans from home that are away from home during the elections or know that they're going to be, astronauts may fill out a federal postcard application to request an absentee ballot. After an astronaut fills out an electronic ballot aboard the orbiting laboratory of the International Space Station, the document flows through NASA's Tracking and Data Relay Satellite System, TDRS, to a ground antenna at the agency's White Sands Test Facility in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Wow. From New Mexico, NASA transfers the ballot to the Mission Control Center at NASA's Johnson Space Center and then onto the county clerk responsible for casting the ballot. To preserve the vote's integrity, the ballot is encrypted and accessible only by the astronaut and the clerk. Now, most astronauts live in the Houston area, so they're voting for those local issues and national issues there. But others have voted from their other residences in state. All right, so I know that you're wanting to know who was the first American to vote for president in space. That could be a question there. I wonder if Steve Jokums knows that one. He is our Ken Jennings of Jeopardy. The first American to vote for president in space was, I'll even give it away, 2004.
Now don't Google this, guys.
Yeah. You got a guess? You're going to learn your astronauts, John. That's why you're sitting there.
I'm sitting here, I'm learning with you guys.
Leroy Chow, okay, who's actually born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He was on the International Space Station and voted in the first presidential election. Of course, the International Space Station being up there and continuously occupied now for 24 years. Apparently none of the elections came up in the 2000 election. And American astronaut Kate Rubins, there she is at the voting booth that she created in the International Space Station. She voted twice in 2016 and 2020 on her expedition visits to the International Space
That
Station.
has to be a record, right? Has
Yeah,
anyone
yeah.
ever
No one
voted
else
twice?
has voted in 2 presidential elections on the ISS.
That's incredible.
While most astronauts live in and are registered to vote in Texas, Andrew Morgan registered to vote in Lawrence County, Pennsylvania. Boy, a lot of Pennsylvania stuff today, and I really don't follow politics, but I see enough on TV to know that that's pretty much the state that could decide our president. That county's Department of Voter Services collaborated with NASA to allow Morgan to vote in the 2019 local election. So that's pretty cool. Didn't put up, oh, well, I did on this. How about, John, how about other countries voting in space? All right. We don't know about the Chinese or care much about who they vote for because that's probably a done deal. But how about Russia? All right. Well, actually, the first people to vote on any kind of election from space was this crew honored on a stamp of Soyuz 11 in 1971. Now, some of you space geeks out there like Steve Jokums and Tom Usiak and Cliff Watson and Dean Babcock and Tom Celentano know that these gentlemen lost their lives. They stayed on the Mir space station for 28 days, and when they came back, a valve opened up and they suffocated. They didn't have spacesuits on and were killed for lack of oxygen, and that is so sad. But they did vote, cast their votes from Salyut 1 for the election for the 24th Congress of the Communist Party of Soviet Union, and news sources consider that to be the first votes to be cast from space. I can't recall any Apollo or Gemini missions where that was an issue. Certainly they were up during November election times for local elections, a few missions, but I couldn't find anything about that. 3 cosmonauts aboard the Mir space station in 1989 voted for the Soviet parliamentary elections without secret ballot. They just told TASS, the reporting news agency, what their choices were when communicating with ground control. So their votes were known to the entire Russian populace there. That was Sergei Krikalev, one of the heroes of their space program, and a hero to all of us that know Sergei Krikalev. I think he had 6 trips to space. He one time held the record. I think he's got 800 days. But he was man without a country. He was on a space station when the USSR fell, and sort of a guy without a country in a way. But now Russians generally let their cosmonauts vote by proxy. They will tell their friend at the Cosmonaut Training Center, some employee, to vote for them and have it all legal, like a couple of them have done over the years. And to our knowledge, one French astronaut, Thomas Piquet, voted from space in 2017. So find that very interesting. Well, the answer to Marty's question, nobody else is chiming in there. Are you giving up to Steve Jokums there? Who was the first astronaut to cast a vote in a U.S. election from outer space, and from where? Well, before I tell you that, it wasn't John Blaha. But hey, Marty, I picked that picture for you, brother. He's a big Yankee fan, and they'd won the World Series when John was in space up there. And John's in his 80s now. Well, John Blaha was stationed on the Mir space station and requested permission to vote in the 1996 presidential election. And a NASA plan was to allow Blaha to vote electronically, but it was stopped when the Secretary of State of Texas pointed out that the state had no provision for any electronic voting. Boo! Are you kidding me? Denying this American his right to vote on a technicality? I wonder what parties were involved there. It doesn't matter. It's politics as usual. But like his vote would sway something. I mean, if I was the state Secretary of State for Texas, that would be on our mantle of achievements if we had the first vote from space. Okay. Well, the following year, Governor George Bush signed a bill originally sponsored by Representative Mike Jackson, whose district included Johnson Space Center, that allowed astronauts to vote electronically. Okay. Now, I'm not sure why Florida Governor, no, it was Texas Governor George Bush. Yeah, I'm getting so confused with the Bushes. That was Jeb Bush, the governor here. Yeah, so George Bush was, that would be Bush number 2, was the Texas governor. And he got that straightened out. So the first person to vote using electronic method from space was David Wolf. And again, kudos to Steve Jokums. He voted in Houston's 1997 local elections while on board the Mir space station. So there you have it. Answer to Marty's question there. So, and yep, Celentano said it was the Salyut space station there. Oh, was it Salyut?
Yeah, he said Salyut. Yep.
No, Wolf was never on the Salyut. It was the Mir space station. No Americans went to the Salyut space station. And Norm Thagard was the first one. Well, we hope that everybody enjoyed looking back a little bit on Election Day 2024. And I think it's appropriate that I put up this picture here of our beautiful nation under the lights and looking so majestic there. I'm sure this is a little bit photo enhanced there. But nonetheless, what a great country we have across the fruited plain. And the main thing is that we stay a great country by unifying each other, Democrats or Republicans or whatever you want to call yourself. It's important that we show the example and shine the light on the rest of the world of what the freedom means to us to choose what we want to do, when and where. And of course, the greatest example of neutral turf is the International Space Station, where every nation, all 20 some of them that have been involved in this miraculous project, get along with no borders and see from the earth no borders, no political boundaries, nothing but just a thin blue line is the only border that we should cherish. It is so tenuous and so fragile when you compare what our world looks like to other worlds in our solar system and where we're suspecting to find in the universe. So that's it for me, Mark Marquette, today. Thank you, John, for a wonderful Streamlabs presentation there. Do we have anything to clean up on your side there? Thank you, Marty, for being there also.
We look good over here on our side. So, yeah, everything looks well.
Well, appreciate it there. And what Tom Celentano corrected me, yes, if I said Mir, I definitely know it was Salyut 1. I believe I said that they were on. The first guys to vote from space were Russians in 1971 on Salyut 1, and they never saw who they voted for win or lose because they lost their lives in the re-entry decompression, so to speak, of their spacecraft. So, well, thank you all for being here today. Tomorrow, I'm going to get back to some more of our Stay Curious roots that got us here by doing a um, Stargazer Mark. All right, stay star curious tomorrow is what we're going to do. So I hope that you can join me, find out what that bright star is and sunset. Now that the sun's setting at around 5 o'clock and getting dark at 5:30, and we got planets in the sky. We are set up for the big fall transition from the winter skies, and I'm going to tell you all about it tomorrow as we stay star curious. Until then, I'm Mark Marquette saying I can't wait to see you again to bridge the space between us.